Hello, everybody. I'm Tyrone Brooks. On behalf of the ABCA, we're glad to welcome you here today. This is a great opportunity for us to share a webinar, which is entitled Sports, Stress, and Performance, Supporting Athletes and Coaches. We're excited today to have this opportunity to share with you, having a group of professionals at both the collegiate and professional levels to talk about the importance of mental health and mental health performance. This is a vital area that our athletes and our coaches need to be fully aware of and allowing them to be productive each and every day in doing their jobs. So on behalf of the leadership of our Frank Robinson Building Access to Support Committee, led by Kerrick Jackson and Bonnie Hoffman, myself, the Professional Development Chair, we're excited to have this opportunity to share with you. We're extremely helpful and thankful for the support of the ABCA, led by Ryan Brownlee and the staff there, to give us the opportunity to share about how we can make sure everyone is fully aware of the importance of mental health and the well-being of our athletes and our coaches. Enjoy, and please have a great opportunity to share and learn. And also, if you need help, please reach out. We are here to assist you. Thank you very much. Okay, we're glad to have our guest, Dr. Yarlie Nicolas. And she is the CEO and founder of Home Field Consulting. We're glad to have you on here, Dr. Nicolas.
Thank you.
Can you tell our ABCA audience, a little bit about your background and your area of expertise within the mental health space?
Sure. Awesome. Well, thank you again for having me. I truly am honored. Again, my name is Dr. Yarlie Nicolas. My athletes affectionately call me Dr. Yarlie. So really honored to do that. My background, actually, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I have over 15 to 16 years in the mental health and sports space. So ranging from experiences working with NBA and NFL players, and then also serving in the NCAA collegiate environments, serving as a mental health subcommittee for the Big 12, as well as serving as assistant AD for various institutions such as the University of Memphis and Baylor University. And so, and also, again, founder of Home Field Consulting, where I focus on the athlete and their family, their systems, right? And so, because our theme is the family is a first home team, I say it all the time. And so, but yeah, I have a passion. In addition to working with athletes, I also do support with executives. So stress management, emotional intelligence, yada, yada. So that's just a little bit about me and my passion of working with athletes.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Mental performance is a growing field. And throughout the sports industry, you see it, with all the increased pressures that to perform at every level, whether professional, college, at the youth level, you can really see how this has become such an important area. Can you discuss a little about what the importance of it is, and then kind of what the priorities of this space, as far as what you see from mental health and mental health performance side?
Yes. So this field is constantly growing, as you know, you and I both know. And when we talk about the reality of its growing, here's some things that, I've seen along the years, right? So there's the social media pressure, right? The NIL contracts, right? Also the recruiting experiences, those things can also impact somebody's mental performance, or will I get picked, put me in, coach, all these things. Also, with this new generation, particularly in the collegiate space, it is mirroring a lot of the pro athletes back in the day, right? So the public visibility, all these other things can add pressure, right? And so my exposure in the collegiate space, as well as working with currently in my private practice pro athletes, I've seen how these things can impact one's performance, more specifically confidence, right? Their a sense of identity, and then also too, when it comes to pressure, there's this fear of, do you like me for me, or do you like me for what I can do? So there's this heavy focus on that. And so what I believe the importance of mental health performance or mental health departments in the collegiate space, as well as the pro space and youth sports, right, is that it helps to aid with building self-awareness, right? When we talk about emotional intelligence, and we also aids with allowing them to know who they are. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we continue. But I just, for in a nutshell, I do see it growing more so in the visibility space, But I also love the fact that you have a lot of these public figure athletes that are being vocal about the importance of talking about mental performance or mental health. And so that kind of breaks the stigma. I believe when I first started 16 years ago, there definitely
Yeah.
was a lot of shame when it came to mental health. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we continue our conversation today. But just in a nutshell, I do see it growing. It's a very big conflicting debate sometimes, particularly for me in the mental health space, where you want to make sure that they're getting paid, you want to make sure that they have their livelihood, but also the duality of, are they learning life skills outside of when they leave collegiate? Are they able to deal with when the NIL checks stop coming in? How you gonna,
Right.
so like, hello, how are you gonna
Right.
adjust and adapt and have transferable skills?
Yeah. Coaches are under more scrutiny and pressure than ever. You look at around our entire industry, even many of our ABCA members are deep in the coaching space. So, they're dealing with this on a daily basis. What advice do you have for coaches that can help them facilitate, prioritizing their own mental health?
Great question. Paraphrasing Snoop Dogg, but coaches need love too. And I'm a really big advocate on ensuring that coaches have a sense of awareness. Again, I look at mental health because I'm clinically trained systemically. I don't just look at the athlete. I look at the people that are supporting the athletes, right? Because if you're stressed, we know this is sports is an organization, it's a system, and it's relational. So if the coaches are stressed, and guess what? The athletes are going to be stressed. If the administrators and leaderships, right? I've been in those, executive roles and stuff. If we're stressed, then guess what? The coaches are going to be stressed. And so there's this domino effect that goes into that. And so, coaches deal with a lot. I'm sure you can talk and attest to it more than I can. Recruiting, sometimes sacrificing their own family time, their own mental health for the purpose of making sure everyone else is good. So we were talking before our call, but traveling, right? One of the things that the steward always says is what? Put the mask on yourself before you put it on everybody else. Right. And so my encouragement, when I was at the University of Memphis, I created a program called the Playbook Session. And so what I did was I looked at the systems. I'm very observant. So I look at the locker room dynamics, where a lot of times the more senior athletes would mentor the rookies. And so I utilize that same, because a lot of coaches are former athletes. And a lot of times they never had the chance to even grieve the glory days. And now they're in this coaching role. And there's like this sense of pressure to perform. And so the difference between the coaches that prioritize their well-being and the ones that don't, because the ones that don't oftentimes focus so much on don't make me look bad. But the ones that do oftentimes focus on the person and the player. And so I say this: healthy coaches create healthy environments. If you're stressed, then it's going to mimic, and I could talk a lot about it from a clinical and research standpoint, but I would just say this, vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. If you're overwhelmed as a coach, for those of you that are listening to this call, book an appointment, right? Like it may not be a therapy. It might just be reaching out to an old coach or reaching out to a colleague. I call that therapy outside of therapy, right? Therapeutic outlets where you can have a place to take your hat off, right? Take the whistle off and just, let me just be myself for 10 minutes, right? It could be a walk in the morning before you start your day. Those things are ways that you can strategize and implement mental wellness, right? And, and so understanding that your mind is a muscle too. Come on, coaches. We work on the body, but we forget that the mind is a muscle as well. So again, healthy coaches create healthy environments, right?
Have our coaches make sure they take a good walk at their ballpark early. Just to kind of relieve maybe a little bit of stress, things they're thinking about, just to clear their head a little bit.
Clear their head. Like if you just had a 2-hour meeting with your staff, go ahead. And I see it all the time. Some of my coaches will go around or they'll go for a quick jog, and that is their uninterrupted time. Do not interrupt them. That's their time to get themselves centered. So correct. Yes. Great question.
Can you discuss some of the misconceptions that are often correlated with mental performance? I feel like this is something that just has to be brought up as an area that should be some discussion and dialogue about.
Listen, this could be another podcast episode. This is a whole different session. I love this question. So, first, I alluded to it in our last question, is to me that mental performance, a lot of times when there's this myth of thinking that in order to seek help, it means I'm struggling. Or if I'm seeking mental performance coaching, it means I'm struggling. Absolutely not. It doesn't just work with those that are fumbling the ball, for lack of a better term, or not making or not catching the ball at the right hand. Mental performance helps with focusing, right? It helps with confidence. It helps with the concept that we call clinically emotional regulation. And I want to talk about that because there was a study that was conducted in 2017 in the Journal of Sports Medicine, Science and Sports Medicine of Sports. And in the study, they talked about the concept of mental toughness versus mental health. And I really love that study because it really eluded the narrative that mental toughness, traditionally, we think mental toughness is what? Suck it up, buttercup, don't show no weakness, you know what I'm saying? Don't let them see you cry. All these other things that we tell our athletes. But in reality in the study, it really helped clarify that mental toughness is really mental emotional regulation. Mental toughness is really being calm in the middle of pressure, right? I know when someone has that is because they're able to navigate. So basically, mental toughness helps with mental health. Mental toughness is not emotional denial. Mental toughness is the ability to be resilient. So if I were to simplify it, right, I would say this, healthy mental toughness, right, is basically confidence, right? And what does that do for a mental health benefit? Well, it helps you cope with stress better, right? If you're resilient, healthful mental toughness, then guess what? You're able to recover after setbacks. This new generation of athletes that I've seen a lot is that when it comes to setbacks or when it comes to criticism or if they're getting constructive feedback, you'll see them shut down a lot. Well, if we teach mental toughness in the perspective of emotional regulation, and in the words Coach K and I, when we were at University of Memphis, we talked about this a lot, neutral thinking, balanced thinking, looking at a setback from a place of learning versus I'm a failure.
No, that's wonderful. So yeah, makes complete sense.
Right. And so these are the things, there's so much more, but I think that to me, to demystify that myth that mental toughness means that I cannot be emotionally vulnerable is a laugh on the pit of hell. So I just, I really want to clarify that to make sure that all our coaches understand the difference. And then understanding that physical development or athletic development requires that your mind, again, I'm going to say this again, your mind is a muscle. So, and then vulnerability is not weakness, it's strength, actually.
Oh man, that's really good.
Thank you.
Let me ask you a question. When you look at your experiences in the college environment, or it's a unique opportunity to impact student athletes each and every day. And can you kind of discuss how mental performance can be incorporated successfully into the culture of assisting athletes and what that process really entails?
That's a great question. So, again, with my experience in the collegiate athletic space, you can't impact the athlete until you change the narrative, right? And I work with a lot of corporate clients. So if you want to do buy-in, you got to start from the top, right? And so once there's a sense of understanding of what this is, I go back to my time at University of Memphis. I was the first to create that mental health program. In order for the athletes to have a system, I had to sit down with the admin. I had to sit down with the executives and have to make sure the policies were there, right? From a compliance standpoint. And once there's a sense of understanding, so then we go to the next phase, which is awareness, right? So the trainings, right? At my time at Baylor, we used to do summer athletic training, right? For coaches, staff, right? Again, I alluded to that earlier, playbook sessions where it was less of a formal checklist, because a lot of times what I'll see too, which is why I was very active in the Big 12 mental health subcommittee, a lot of times you'll see that mental health is considered a compliance checklist. We want to look good with the NCAA versus embedding it in the everyday life. So what I would do is I would train some coaches. And I remember one of my track coaches would do something I called a check-in. And so before practice, they would sit down with the athletes and take a deep breath, do some grounding techniques, and ask each one, how are we feeling today? Right? Before they go in and start doing hurdles, before they go in and start doing all that other things, or my baseball players and coaches, I would have these kind of talks and kind of see where they're, check the thermometer, right? Because once you're emotionally connected, then that helps with the performance as well. And guess what? Athletes, when they see that, trust is crucial. When they see that they can come to you and you're not just a shrink. So another thing I did, again, my background was in marketing before I became a doctor, and I would watch to see where the athletes would congregate. They all love food. So I would sit there and go,
Yeah.
and I would
Right.
go in. And I don't know if you see the show, Steve Harvey, remember Regina's character, the principal boss lady.
Yeah.
So I would come in and I wouldn't say anything about mental health, but I would just make sure that they would build that trust. I worked in education as well. So I knew how to work the cafeteria. I knew how to
Yeah.
get the kids in the line. So once they, hey doc, hey Dr. Y, how you doing? And they're like, and then so the new kid's like, who's that? They're like, yo, you need to go to her. Like, bro, if you stress, you go to her. And so little by little, and it doesn't matter what sport, they all had a sense of like, oh my God, she's safe. Oh my God, she sees with us. And I would say, how you doing? I would see one sit by themselves and I would check with them. And I'm like, hey, if you ever need to talk, I'm here. I wouldn't impose it, but I would just use that as an example. So that's one. So again, from the top, buy-in. Second is training, right? Understand the difference between psychological distress, or like we talked about, mental toughness versus mental health. And then the third level is, of course, the athlete, right? And so looking at it from the way I would do the implementation of the mental health is through tiers. So that's my encouragement.
Love it. Love it. Throughout the most recent women's college basketball season, Lauren Betts of UCLA, who most recently was the 4th overall pick in the WNBA draft by the Washington Mystics, she was outspoken about her own mental health journey and some of her personal struggles. Can you talk a little bit about how sports has made it extremely important, especially within the college game, for college student athletes to really have a grasp of their own self-identity and the personal courage to, not be afraid to be vulnerable in these current times?
Yes. I think when we talk about the courage, right? Or when we talk about, Lauren Betts and, just the culture of college sports, right? I alluded to that when we were talking earlier about NIL and public perception and this, and I used to say this, the world saw ESPN and everybody else and their mama saw the Superman, but I was able to see the Clark Kent, right? I was able to kind of take that mask off, or how you want to look at it. If they're Superman, their true identity, and Clark Kent, whatever. But for the purpose of the illustration, I called my office the telephone booth, where you're able to take the cape off, where you're able to accept that, right? And not negating that this is the culture that we're in, especially with social media, the digital era where perception is a big part, and especially with this generation. So not honoring that, understanding that, but also the thing I say is, in my athletes, I had a whiteboard in my offices, and I would say, your job is not your identity. Your job is your assignment.
Mm. Wow.
And a lot of times where we can bleed and lose ourselves in the sport or lose our identities, that when we become so immersed in it that we don't know anything else. So as a leader in the mental health space in the sports world, I am very big on advocating and ensuring, like I have some professional athletes that I work with in my private practice. And I said, what did you like to do outside of sports? I have one that plays in the league, and he said, Doc, I like photography. I said, okay, let's pick that up after
Mhm.
practice. Let's try to.
Yeah.
And when I say that this has been transformative, I have another one who is a physician and a pro athlete at the same time. And I'm like, okay, what do we do outside of that? Well, Doc, I like to travel. Okay. So when we go book some, and it doesn't have to be like you have to go to Cabo, but it could be.
Yeah.
So really exploring their identities outside of the uniform has been instrumental in ensuring that when they get on the field, right, when they get on the ballpark, when they get on the meet, that they are like, okay, I got something to look forward to after this.
Mm-hmm.
Because your identity, a lot of times when it's so and it goes with my corporate clients too, when I have a CFO, I have executives, I have CEOs that I work with, when their whole identity is tied to the spreadsheet, it's miserable. So I tried to make a space where, you know, they understand that mental health is not a bad thing. It's every day. According to the World Health Organization, they define mental health as the balance or the equilibrium between your bio, psycho, and social. Everyone has a mental health, right? If we look at the word human or humas, right? Spirit, man, we're three-part beings, spirit, soul, and
Mm-hmm.
body. And so a lot
Yep.
of times in the sports world, we focus on the physical, or in the faith-based world they focus on the spiritual, but no one thinks about the soul, which is really your mental health. So when you are able to cultivate that and realize this is what I do, but it's not who I am, now you'll be able to sustain, and you're able to support. I'm going to end with this. I'm an island girl. I told you that earlier. And so I think about, growing up in South Florida, whenever they would do new developments, I always love HGTV. I love watching new construction. And in South Florida, we know there's palm trees, right? When you think about Miami or South, Boca, whatever, there's palm trees everywhere. But as a little girl, I would ask my daddy, I said, Daddy, why is that when they put the palm tree, they put wood to support it as they're finishing up construction? He said it's so that the tree doesn't, and it's not just palm trees, any type of landscaping. I noticed they just put the wood. Well, I take the mental health department as the wood of support, right? I take families as another branch of that wood. I take the coaches as another branch of that wood, and being able to help sustain their identity. And then after a while, the wood leaves so that they're able
Yeah.
to endure. The thing about palm trees during hurricanes growing up, whenever the winds would blow, right? They would be able to what? Be resilient and sustain the stressors of life. That's what Lauren Bates was talking about when she modeled that. That's when we talk about being okay with not being okay. Naomi Osaka, all these other athletes that we talk about, that's what they're trying to emphasize. I need you to be a wood. I need to be able to navigate, and I'm drowning right now. And no fear in that. Again, your job is not your identity. It's your assignment. And when we think about mental health and we think about sports, we have to think about all these avenues. And lastly, I want to say this to wrap up. We are building not just competitors, but people. Your mental health helps to strengthen the individual. And when the individual is good, the environment is good. So that's my take on it.
Wow. No, you summed it up nicely there. And thank you for just these great words of wisdom. I know our members are going to really enjoy hearing what you have to say here, and just something that's going to really be something that's going to hit them truly in their heart, I believe, in each and every way, just with the advice you've been able to give to our coaches who have very difficult jobs in so many different levels, whether at the collegiate level, pro, youth sports, so many different things that they're all dealing with. So again, thank you for really putting that real bow on this topic as we move forward in
Yeah.
this universe that we call baseball, and something that we many of us have a deep passion and love for, that has allowed us to one have a certain identity for ourselves in very much any way, in so many different ways. But again, having that love and passion for the game, and hopefully something that's going to be, in many cases, a whole lifelong experience along the way.
Yes.
We all
Yes.
have a journey that we're all on, and it's something that hopefully we have a chance to enjoy this ride along the way, and not just the stress of it all at different times, which can be obviously certain points of celebration along the way that make us want to continue to get better and grow each and every day, but also having, how do we handle failure? How do we handle
Yeah.
adversity? And
Yes.
this being, as you mentioned earlier, being resilient, to understand more about themselves each and every day. Mm-hmm.
Well, it truly was an honor. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And for all of you
Thank you so
out
much.
there, just know that, I'm here if you ever need me. But thank you. Truly is an honor to be selected for this, and look forward to connecting more.
Thank you, Dr. Nicholas. Appreciate you. Thank you so much for this. Mhm.
You're welcome.
We're here with James Jones. He's the mental performance coordinator with the Texas Rangers. James, thanks for joining us, man. We really appreciate you being a part of this. James, can you tell our ABCA audience a little bit about your background and your area expertise as far as the mental health space?
Got you. Background. Grew up, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. Was drafted in 2009 to the Seattle Mariners as an outfielder, and ended my career my last year in 2023 with the Dodgers. In between there, I got traded to Texas. But as far as like my expertise in the mental health, it all started in low A. I read a book called Mind Gym, and that's when I started to realize like the edge with players, and the edge with players in general wasn't really talent. Once you get to the professional level, it was really the mental side. Even mental performance, mental health, how you take care of yourself off the field and how it translates to on the field. But ever since then, I've always kept diving in, and currently I'm holding down the mental performance coordinator position while finishing up my master's with clinical mental health counseling.
Okay. Mental performance is a growing field. You look around our sports industry right now, and there seems like with all the increased pressures to perform at all levels, whether professional, college, and the youth sports space. Can you discuss how the current state of sports is really seeing the real great importance of prioritizing mental health and also mental health performance as part of that?
Absolutely. I mean, with everything that's been going on, the trends in sports, mental performance is big now. I felt like it was compartmentalized, where it's just like what you do on the field. But with the trends of like some of the big names out there in every sports, baseball, basketball, football, that everyone's talking about it, and it's bringing a lot of awareness. And that's the thing that's helping a lot of people dive into it, because they realize if we could take care of the mental side with these players, it's going to be a domino effect onto their performance on the field.
Coaches are under more scrutiny and pressure than ever now. Many of our ABCA members are deep into the coaching space, and this is on a daily basis with many of them. So, what advice would you give to coaches, as far as that can facilitate helping them to really prioritize their own mental health?
Man, coaches are going through a lot of pressure. They're graded too on their performance also, just like the players. One of the biggest things I'll give them advice for is understanding that players are looking at them, how they carry themselves, the energy they bring to the field. But the biggest advice I would give all of them is to utilize the mental performance coaches that are there. They're not just for the players, but they're also there for you too. And I realize a lot of the coaches, they just think it's just for the players. But once they start becoming aware of what stresses them out, they become aware of what actually fills their buckets off the field. They actually show up in a better position to listen to the players, to be present, and to prepare for the game. So I would say utilize the mental performance coaches around them, even if it's them finding someone outside the field for them to, I would say, sort of bring everything into their scope, because sometimes they just separate it also with on the field and off the field.
Mm-hmm. Can you discuss a little bit about some of the maybe misperceptions or people often may have when it comes to mental performance?
Absolutely. Some of the misconceptions is when you're talking to a mental performance coach is something's wrong. A lot of times that's not the case. And I would say it's trending in a good area where now people are using the mental performance coaches to actually prepare themselves the same way they'll use a strength coach to prepare a workout for them. A lot of people don't look at someone weird if they were talking to a strength coach about their workout program and the phases and the transitions. So now people are starting to realize, like, I don't have to wait until something's wrong to actually talk to a mental performance coach. They could actually help me with my routines. They can help me gain a better perspective on where I am and where I'm going. So the misconception of like something is absolutely wrong and I need some big time help with something that's going on, that it's starting to go away. And now mental performance is starting to step into an arena where, hey, we're here to help you even before the storm hits.
It's wonderful. Your background is, extremely unique, being that you played the game at such a high level, playing in the big leagues for several years with Seattle and also just playing 14 years in general. How does this unique path really help you in, assisting professional players now on a daily basis? And, they're out there competing, and you were in their same exact shoes, how does that really help you to have such a maybe sort of an advantage to connect with them?
Connecting with the ball players based on my experience, my past career, has helped a lot. I felt a lot of the same things they felt, from being not knowing when you're going to get drafted to finally when you step foot on the professional field for the first time and seeing how good everyone is. I felt the same thing they felt. It's even of living off the field and taking care of yourself, waking up on time to have breakfast before you even get to the field. It's a lot of the little things that maybe some of the people that hasn't played experience. But being that I walked every part of their career, all the way up to the big leagues, I'm able to, minimize that transition of actually explain to some of the players have a hard time explaining it, and I could help express that for them. So it definitely helps me connect. Guys have a lot of questions, especially as you get to the high A and double A, when you could smell it a little bit. You're getting close to that call. So it's just one of those things where guys let their guard down a lot faster with me, knowing that I've experienced everything they've done, that they're experiencing and want to experience it in their career.
When you look across our industry, as far as the resources that are being distributed and implemented to improve mental health amongst our pro players, what do you see as far as these trends, what you see across the league now?
And I say trends that I see across the league right now, you hear it all the time. What's your routine looking like? And before, most people would start just thinking about drills on the field and what they do prior. But now you're seeing a lot of players is starting to answer like how I start my day, whether it's meditation, visualization, starting my intent before I get to the field. More players are starting to bring that in. As far as like different areas, we're starting to train the physiological side, which is like the breathing and how that actually blocks or gives you access to the skills that you have on the field. So we're training these guys in a way of how to regulate their breathing so they can actually focus and stay locked into the present moment, because that's when the flow state starts.
That's great. Have you also seen just how more resources have been put in place now amongst the various clubs? Looking at your own club, and then you also look at just across the league now. Have you seen much as far as that implementation now?
Yeah, it's definitely starting to trend now. This is our first time where we actually have metrics in the mental performance side, which is, some people's like, how do you, measure the mental side? But we measure the physiological side, since it gives an open door to the mental side. As far as like across the league, everyone has the mental health access to psychologists they're present with us, visiting us at affiliates the same way I do visiting affiliates. So access to actual mental health professionals is wide open. And that's one of the biggest things that's changed compared to when I first got drafted in 2009 till this year in 2026.
That's great. Let me ask you, this is like our last question. Just kind of any final thoughts that you want to share, either about yourself or the work you do, that you think our listeners here from the ABCA and our members may have maybe a nugget you want to leave them with.
I leave them with this. I tell my players this a lot, and I even tell the staff. Everyone is going through the same exact thing. I believe 5 things usually happens. You get triggered, and then your body gives yourself a reaction, and then you get a thought process. The 4th thing, you actually put story, meaning to that thought process. And then the 5th part is the behaviors and the mechanics. A lot of times we try to fix, our thoughts, but our body reacts way faster than our thoughts. And the way that we are able to train it is, I'm not going to train and change your triggers, but I can help your body respond so you could keep your thoughts in line and get the perspective that actually gets you to flow state. So one of the biggest things is we train breath every day. We use that to increase stress capacity. A lot of times we go in a different angle of people try to minimize stress. I look at it the way as how can I increase your stress capacity so you can handle more stress? Because if we handle more stress in a healthy way, that equals more growth.